The new abilities that Samus gains in the latest Metroid games seem quite powerful. In fact, I would say some even make her insanely overpowered outside of game mechanics. Hidden deep within the Chozo complex, I find myself awed at the great temples we get to experience. Within each temple, there is a large statue that bears the symbol of the ability that is held within. You are then presented with a large bird's mouth that, once you morph ball into, swallows you whole. Kinky. Now placed into a new area, but equipped with a new ability, you need to escape by using it to figure out the next puzzle. These new Aeion abilities in order are Scan Pulse, Lightning Armor, Beam Burst, and Phase Shift. All clearly abilities of science fiction, but just how fictional are they? And how would such abilities work? Let's find out today on Gnoggin.
And speaking of power-ups in video games, you know what powers up your gaming? Being properly energized. And that's where Catalyst Mints come in. Perfectly portioned, caffeinated mints that leave you playing strong and without the crash in the end. And now, with worldwide shipping and a monthly subscription service, you will never be without your power-up. The subscription even comes with free lifetime shipping, which only increases its value. Check them out with the link in the description and use the coupon code Gnoggin for an even greater discount. And a huge thank you to Catalyst Mints for continuing to support this channel's endeavors.
Metroid Samus Returns is an excellent game, and I hope Nintendo continues making more Metroidvanias like this. But those 4 new abilities of hers, they are nice and very helpful, so let's get to explaining them. But first, what even is Aeion? Well, it's complicated. So let's wait until we need to explain it to explain an ability. For now, just know that Aeion is the power source of these abilities. A sort of battery. The Scan Pulse ability is the first of the new Aeion abilities that Samus has at her disposal. This ability is pretty straightforward. You activate the pulse and it fills your map with a grayed out silhouette of rooms around Samus. It also highlights breakable blocks for about 5 to 10 seconds. This ability is a godsend when you find yourself lost or just plain stumped on where you need to go. Anything to prevent you from breaking immersion and looking up a walkthrough, really. This Scan Pulse is rather tame in comparison to the other abilities we see Samus obtain. So tame that it can be explained with today's technology, in fact. Currently, our similar technology is called STI, or Subterranean Target Identification, created by Silicon Graphics Incorporated, also known as SIG. Man, these guys love acronyms. The technology uses sound waves to create a profile of the ground. You start with some sort of loud sound like an explosion, and the microphones pick up the sound waves as they pulsate and bounce around underground. And the software then creates a profile. The technology is mainly used to find oil, but has recently been used to help military personnel in finding bunkers and hidden tunnels. The same application that our favorite bounty hunter uses it for. Hers, though, seems to be based on a loud ping instead of an explosion, with her suit's computer system creating a visual representation of the weakened, breakable blocks, and her map is updated with some vital information as well, but still it's not a full map. Rather, it's the computer making estimates about where things are. But as of now, it cannot confirm it 100%. Though for the sake of gameplay mechanics, it is 100%, but you know what I mean. So Samus's Scan Pulse is 100% possible even with today's tech, so who's to say it wouldn't be a viable piece of tech in the future? I mean, cell phones and airplanes were considered sci-fi at one point too. Next up is her Lightning Armor. This ability is the second one that you obtain and is described in-game as a protective electric barrier. This armor protects you from almost anything in-game as long as you have enough Aeion energy. There are 2 things that I found still hurt you anyway, however. And those are the purple fluid and the red crystals, but those are mainly used to stop you from progressing in the game too far. You need to lower the fluid by finishing off Metroids, and the red crystals are to keep you out of certain areas without using certain abilities to get there. Game mechanics, am I right? Other than that though, the lightning armor protects you from everything. It also powers up your melee and melee counter to a much larger swipe. This seems quite straightforward too. The suit dips into the Aeion energy to create a high voltage current around the suit. Anything that touches this current would instantly be shocked. Hence why it's so nice to jump through those swarms of annoying bats. I hate them! But full protection just from electricity all around you, that seems a little far-fetched. Well, some American supercruisers state that they have an electric armor defense grid that disrupts missiles' ion jets and controls them slightly to force them to miss, thus protecting the ship's hull. But in Metroid, one of the most common times you use this ability is to get through patches of thorns adorned with red flowers. These patches seem to sap Samus's energy extremely quickly for just bramble pushes. But when you roll through them with your lightning armor on, they seem to try and escape from the shock. Great, more sentient alien plants. It seems that this defensive armor follows the old adage, a good offense is a great defense. This explains why non-organic objects like liquid and the crystals still hurt Samus when she touches them, as they don't retract or pull away from the shock. In a way, this armor acts like an invisible electric fence. Organic things don't want to touch it, and they get tased just before hitting Samus. And as for other things that it protects that wouldn't necessarily be sentient, like the drops of acid, well, the electricity simply zaps and evaporates it. And this plays right into the additional ability that the lightning armor grants, the melee ability increase. One swipe is able to eradicate a huge swarm of bats or small creatures, and gives a large increase to the range of the counter. Simply because lightning energy is all around you, and swinging your arms moves that lightning ability around you because, well, your arm is part of you. Science is pretty interesting. The third ability you receive is the Beam Burst. This is also a welcomed ability, especially after those pesky automated turrets show up, as they take an immense amount of damage before they blow. The Beam Burst boosts her arm cannon's power to new heights, letting you fire much faster automatically, saving your thumb from fatigue. This ability is rather straightforward and acts as a separate beam. Once you activate the ability, your gun glows and you lose the ability to swap between your normal beam and ice beam. You are still able to swap to your grapple beam, however, for those quick getaways. The new beam is orange in color and does not affect your rockets. The beam also boosts damage of whatever beam you currently have. Once you get the plasma beam, this upgrade boosts your gun to the maximum damage it can be naturally. And Samus's gun seems to be based off of an energy beam weapon, so it's possible that if you simply add more Aeion juice, the gun will be stronger. There are only a few ways to make a laser more powerful, either changing the wavelength or the output power. With the added Aeion energy, the gun is sent into an overdrive mode, where it fires much faster and at a stronger damage output. Simple stuff. You add more power to a thing that's based on power, and it gets more powerful. And it makes a lot more sense after we explain Aeion energy more clearly. But first, the final ability is the one that I found myself using more in boss fights than in puzzles. It's the Phase Shift ability. This ability is one of the more insane abilities that Samus gains from this new title. Phase Shift is a pretty intense name too, and one that actually helps give us some insight into what this ability does. It seems to slow down time to where you're able to run across the unstable blocks that would normally break apart the instant you step on them. They still break, of course, but at a much slower pace. This ability slows down time for everything but the user, by using ridiculously large amounts of Aeion energy. So, time manipulation! Now that's one humans still haven't quite figured out. So to start with this, we need to explain what Aeion energy could be. Aeion has had a few different definitions throughout history. Many of these definitions don't quite fit in line with how the energy is being used so far though. Some of its definitions are 1 billion years, while others make it mean life or vitality. But in Gnosticism, the word Aeion means a supreme being or a universal ability. And that could explain how she is able to overload her already destructive beam weapons along with the energy to create an electric field able to shock any creature that comes in contact. The proverbial power of the Chozo gods, or God, is gifted to our heroine through its high energy. And what are gods to a super spiritual yet scientifically advanced race? Well, some people theorize that a fourth or higher dimensional being would be the equivalent of a god to us. Perhaps the Chozo found a fourth dimensional entity with all of their spiritual power and were able to make contact and gain the Aeon's power. This brings me to how Samus is able to manipulate time. It's hard for humans to perceive the fourth dimension, as we are stuck in the third dimension, where time is difficult to perceive as a constant. But a fourth dimensional being would not be tied to time, at least not our definition of it. So it is possible that the Chozo received or finally gained an understanding to manipulate time through their contact with a fourth dimensional being. Instead of time travel, which has many problems leading to it being very improbable to possibly even impossible, time manipulation is much more reasonable, much like how gliding is much more reasonable than flying back in the 1800s. With time manipulation, it seems that Samus drifts into a different phase or into a different plane in between the third and fourth dimensions, where she is then able to manipulate or slow time down thanks to her new perspective. Or alternatively, it could just be that Aeon energy simply overcharges her brain and allows her to process information and send commands to her suit much faster, creating an effect that looks as if the world is moving in slow motion, but really it's just her mind is going double the speed. Much like the Flash in the DC universe, he is able to process information at inhuman speeds, therefore he is able to act out his motions and take fractions of seconds to do things that would normally take us forever. Either way, it's cool though. I'm leaning a bit more towards that first possibility though, since the Chozo are a very spiritually inclined race. And they built the suit, in case you didn't know. So with all of her new abilities more or less explained, I can chime in now on how ridiculous these seem at start. But once you really look at them, they start to make sense. The scan pulse is even used today, with the other abilities not too far off of our real science. Her lightning armor is rather crude and could run into some difficulties though. Like when touching water, it should defuse her charge. In fact, her walking could even break the surface unless her feet are isolated from the current. Her burst beam is a nice complement to her already strong weaponry, and then her final ability, Phase Drift, is pretty powerful, granting her what could easily be perceived as a superpower. I guess you could say that Metroid is no stranger to power creep. And now I just can't wait for the next game when we'll lose all these abilities and gain them all back again. Lovely. Well, I hope you had a ball watching this video. Feel free to share it around and support this channel if you'd like. And until next time, please remember to never stop using your noggin. And Phase Shift. All clearly abilities of science fiction, but just how fictional are they? And how would such abilities work? Let's find out today on Noggin.
And speaking of power-ups in video games, you know what powers up pieces its value. Check them out with a link in the description and use the coupon code Noggin for an even greater discount. And a huge thank you to Catalyst Mints for continuing to support this channel's endeavors.
Metroid Samus Returns is an excellent game, and I hope Nintendo continues making more Metroidvanias like this. But those 4 new abilities of
your gaming being properly energized. And that's where Catalyst Mints come in. Perfectly portioned caffeinated mints that leave you playing strong and without the crash in the end. And now, with worldwide shipping and a monthly subscription service, you will never be without your power-up. The subscription even comes with free lifetime shipping, which only increases.
The new abilities that Samus gains in the latest Metroid games seem quite powerful. In fact, I would say some even make her insanely overpowered outside of game mechanics. Hidden deep within the Chozo complex, I find myself awed at the great temples we get to experience. Within each temple there is a large statue that bears the symbol of the ability that is held within. You are then presented with a large bird's mouth that, once you morph ball into, swallows you whole. Kinky. Now placed into a new area but equipped with a new ability, you need to escape by using it to figure out the next puzzle. These new Aeion abilities in order are Scan Pulse, Lightning Armor, Beam Burst,